Thank you, everyone, for taking time out of your busy week. Really looking forward to this conversation. Over the last 6 months or so, I have had the opportunity to do over a dozen AI workshops for different medical affairs teams. Have built upwards of 30 AI applications that we're using now within medical affairs. And let's see, I've probably used AI already 5 or 6 hours today. Uh, and so it is really something that, I've spent a lot of time thinking about, working in, using. And as Linda and I have had some conversations about AI and its impact in medical affairs, we thought this was a very important topic. And I'll show you why in just a moment. So, um, for those I haven't had a chance to meet yet, my name is Scott. Founded Acceleration Point about 15 years ago, and I'm really passionate about the impact and the work that medical affairs does, and our ability to communicate that impact, make it measurable, and then finding ways to make that impact happen even faster. Today is going to be this conversation about AI, specifically on its impact on medical affairs. And we do have some data to present to you, some concepts and some suggestions, some things that we see that medical affairs and field medical in particular may want to be doing in order to stay ahead of this AI curve. But we also want to make sure we spend time today answering questions, addressing concerns. We may not have all the answers, but please share questions, concerns. This is a very important topic. And if we don't have answers today, your questions may give us things that we will go find answers to and continue to share with this community. So, excellent. Well, let me tell you why today, why this conversation, how this webinar came to be. Um, as Linda and I were having one of our many conversations about AI and how to use it and how to help medical affairs use it, we came across a piece of data that came from the MSL Society in a survey that they provided to the field medical community. And this is what that said. It said, so out of all the respondents, 6% believe that AI will significantly affect the MSL role. 6%. Okay. Um, this was only a few months ago, and it was a pretty large group. And so when we saw that, Linda and I probably spent a few hours talking about it. We said, well, that would be a really good topic to bring this community together and to discuss, because we also believe that it's way too low and that we are underestimating the impact that it will have on field medical. So today we are going to share a little bit around some figures and facts of things that are happening today. We'll share some of our experience in working within AI within medical affairs, and then we'll also share some things that we see that you can do in order to help your team stay ahead of it. And so many of you already know Linda Traylor. Linda is with us. So glad to have this conversation together because Linda has been like every role in medical affairs, from head of field medical, MSL coach. Welcome, Linda. You want to give everybody a quick hello?
Absolutely. So I, like Scott, am looking forward to this conversation. I think that we all been having this conversation one on one, but I think we're at that point where we need to expand it to the group, a broader group conversation. So I'm excited about that. But my background, as Scott said, I've been in industry for over 25 years. I've done a lot of the roles, including MSLing all the way up to head of MSLs, executive leader over medical affairs functions. MSL coach was a fun job I had for a few years in Novartis. When I moved over to consulting about 5 years ago, it wasn't because I thought I had all the answers. I just feel like I had a lot of the lived experience to be able to relate to people in the problem solving effort together. And that's really what I wanted to accomplish. I've known Scott and David for over a decade, and as many of you have, I think, on this call. And so I was really excited, a little kismet when it came together that they needed a leader, and I was ready for that shift. And so I'm glad to be at Acceleration Point. Their philosophy aligns significantly with my philosophy, even though we debate a lot.
As we should.
You'll probably hear a little bit of that today, but yeah, it's fun to be here, and I'm excited to learn from you as well as kind of share our point of view.
Wonderful, Linda. So excited. So, anybody that's on the call, please contribute. Jump in, drop a chat question along the way. We're happy to diverge. We've got plenty of time from the topics. But where we thought we would guide the conversation today, because it's kind of the flow that Linda and I had as we were, really reflecting on that survey, is to look up additional data. So we've had some more data for you. We'll actually show you some things that are happening. And then we're going to talk a little about where MSLs spend their time versus where AI is already winning. And that's really the heart of it. We'll also talk a bit about where AI is currently fallen short. Where AI falls short is where opportunity exists, and so we want to make sure that we identify those areas. And then we've got what we're putting together, what we're calling our survival playbook, and it's just a handful of things that, as both Linda and I have been working with a variety of field medical teams, teaching them everything from how to use AI in their CRM to using Copilot. We did a big Copilot workshop with people from different companies, to meetings with executive teams. What are the specific things that you could be doing today to be ready for the things that are going to change because of AI? All right. So, and again, if anybody else has any best practices, things that you're seeing that's working, things that are in your way, please drop them in the chat, because we'd love to discuss them and make this as specific for you today as we can. Okay. So let's jump into some uncomfortable data, some things that are a little bit scary. So first of all, in the last 3 to 4 months, I have gotten more phone calls from colleagues, friends in the industry than I had had ever, saying, "Hey, I'm being restructured. My entire team is being told they have to reapply for their jobs and interview. Roles aren't being backfilled." We have a team of analysts that do a really, really good job on territory design, helping MSL leaders determine the number of MSLs they need, where to put them, how to align KOLs and HCPs to those territories. And for years, it was, "Hey, can you show us, models that are 17, 20, 25?" And now we're getting, "Hey, what happens if I have to cut to 12, 10, 9?" And we're just hearing that all the time. And when you look across the data, Biospace had some. We also did some independent analysis on LinkedIn. Um, in 2025, there were over 42,000 layoffs that were happening in the biopharma space. That is up almost 50% from the previous year. And when you look at the number of unique and distinct companies that were doing it, it was just over 27% more companies in 2025 than 2024 that were announcing those layoffs. Right. And we're not here to say that all of those, or even any of those, were because of AI. But when you take those numbers and see that change and hear that they're not being backfilled, that it's not that we're going to remove 5 and add 7, right? It is a reduction in force. And when you pair that with some other conversations and data that we're seeing across industries, there was a Harvard Business Review article that is talking about how 300,000 US jobs are expected to be eliminated this year. And so far, as you look at the numbers, only about 54,000 of those were explicitly attributed to AI, right? Where employers are saying AI is the reason that we're losing the jobs, right? The rest are being talked about as the same thing we are hearing: restructuring, efficiency, different strategic alignment. and they're not seeing the backfills either. And the conclusion that Harvard Business Review came up with, and it's the same thing I'm hearing in executive conversations, is it's not that AI is replacing roles, it's that the promise of AI is something that they're starting to hedge toward, right? It's not there yet, right? We're not seeing AI take on the work that everybody is expecting it to do, but we are hearing so much conversation about its potential, and we're hearing so much conversation about what will come that companies are starting to hedge their bets, is what came out of HBR. So what that means is when you go back to that MSL Society survey, right, and there were 806 medical affairs professionals in the data, um, 72% were able to point to medical information as kind of an easy place to put AI. And honestly, most of the projects that we're hearing that are going to take over work really are starting there, right? Answering medical questions based on a set of documents and data that exists. But this piece where 6% or 94% of the industry were saying that MSLs are safe from this, we really don't believe that's right. And based on your responses to the survey, we don't either. And we're just really starting to see some evidence of that, right? Right. So, for example, digital MSLs are already being deployed, right? There's multiple companies that we talk to and are working with where AI agents are monitoring HCP information, recommending engagement actions, predicting HCP behavior. Nick just put some great ones in the chat for us too, right? Pre-call planning, Congress planning, territory planning, right? We're seeing more and more movement towards automated emails versus MSL, please send these emails, right? We're starting to see that automation from the digital and omnichannel teams accelerate. Drafting communications, right? These are all tasks that are often the role of field medical that we're starting to see get automated. It's not being done in pilot, right? Last year, the year before, we were seeing a lot of pilots. We're seeing them in production where they are actually happening right now. Okay. Yeah. So one of the questions that came in is if we're seeing AI email KOLs, is AI just going to start meeting with them too? And he says laugh out loud, but we are seeing chatbots that are trained on medical communications where they're having a conversation. Right. The potential. Now, here's the real hard part of this conversation. This is where we think the risk is coming from. So, in the last decade, we have seen a 300% growth in MSL goals. If you look across Zoom RX, the MSL Society has a similar data set. LinkedIn, they all kind of showed around 300%. Okay. In the last decade. And most are still saying that they're planning to expand. We also have a lot of data saying that it's very hard to measure the impact of medical affairs holistically, but also of MSLs, right? 3% in those same surveys were rating MSL measurement as effective. 67% are saying it's really difficult to do this. And so where AI can now do a lot of tasks in a world where you had extreme growth, difficult measurement, that is going to lead to people asking questions around where productivity can come from because of the promise, right? They're investing dollars in AI and they're going to be asking, because they always ask when you do technology investments, what is the ROI? And the ROI that all of these companies are pointing towards regarding why to invest the dollars in the technology is it's going to save time. It's going to save capacity. It's going to save on headcount. And true, Pete, thanks for your comment there, right? AI, we've heard this language before, right? About how AI may not replace MSLs, but MSLs who learn to use it. will replace those who don't, right? And I think that is really spot on, but there's a nuance to it that I think has changed in the last just even 2 months. And it's really where Linda is going to pick up the conversation.
Yeah, so I think one of the things about that statement is it comes down to the use of effectively leverage AI, and that's what we're gonna be really focusing on today. The other part is this is I call this a cliche statement. If I've heard it once, I've heard it a million times. And but not just in our industry. It didn't this wasn't like born in our industry. It's like insert any profession and you'll hear it somewhere on LinkedIn or on TV or on some news social outlet that people are saying this a lot. So the reason why we're focusing on MSLs from a medical affairs lens, that's the human element of the interface with the medical communities, where all organizations interface with the medical community through the field medical organization. And it's the human element that's going to be the focus of the conversation in terms of where we evolve, how we are moving the profession to kind of adapt to this new world order. And so the the interchange is even if you're not in field medical, that interchange with the medical community is at the scientific engagement spectrum, and it hasn't changed. It's the same. It starts off, it's the four key areas is you cannot have an opinion about something till you're aware of the new science, understanding of the data, and where that data fits into the patient journey. Still the same. We also need to understand, as part of the engagement, the scientific exchange or engagement spectrum is where the beliefs lie. A lot of organizations are assessing a sentiment and understanding what the beliefs are to the improved patient care. And then some are doing a really great job of taking it to the next level of actually measuring change in the clinical behavior we care about. So the four components of scientific engagement spectrum are still intact, and we're going to focus on how that separates out and from AI versus human as we go. But let's talk a little bit about where your teams are spending time now before we kind of dive in. Yeah.
Yeah, where do your MSLs spend most of their time in scientific exchange? Right, bringing awareness to new science, teaching, making sure people understand it, helping to drive belief around that science, or helping put that science into practice, removing barriers and helping people act on it.
I mean, you guys came to a webinar titled AI Reckoning in Field Medical. So you have some sort of, readiness for moving in a direction where the human element makes a bigger impact. The understanding is still a place where we see from this audience's response a big area for field engagement or the scientific engagement. This somewhat, but not completely, lines up with some of the data we're seeing from another survey done by the MSL Society, but it does line up with what we're experiencing from our when engaging our clients. Is that we're still seeing a lot, like 70 to 80% of the time is in awareness, understanding, admin, according to people in these roles or from a few years ago. I also see from our engagement with our clients that on average, although there's a spectrum, MSLs engage KOLs just 2 to 3 days per week, approximately 5 interactions per week, and lists range around 50-ish relationships maintained. Now that's relationships maintained. That doesn't necessarily think about the whole list of potential engagements. But this data is not too far off, but it also presents the exact intersection where we need to be having a conversation of where AI takes over and where we should be shifting our focus. Because if 70 to 80% of your day is awareness and understanding and admin, that's really the portion that is where the value story is most vulnerable from an AI perspective. Because the math, and unfortunately, this is the math. This is the debate Scott and I are having a lot. This is where the math nobody wants to really talk about yet and plan for. And that's really a key element here is planning for this shift. It's happening. So let's, as we begin to integrate using AI in our activities and our time spent, especially in this upfront area, we can absolutely get caught up into the productivity trap. And so that is really, where is AI being used today? Most medical affairs teams that we're hearing from are applying AI to accelerate work that already exists, and that's literature synthesis, pre-call prep, internal reporting, slide generation, and so on and so on. And does it make us do a little bit better and faster? Absolutely. But where are the organizations and the leadership are starting to demand is transformation. And so we need to be focusing on, if AI absorbs that sort of cognitive overhead of awareness and understanding in that scientific engagement spectrum, that means we're freeing up some time. There's capacity to be had. So where should that recaptured capacity go? And so that's the question, that's the planning element. So if your teams increase their capacity because of using AI, and this areas that Nick pointed out in the chat, is like by 500%, by 1,200%, what are you going to do with that capacity to engage? What does that look like? And that's really where we're going to be focusing. What should the teams be focusing on?
In most of the leadership sessions that I've done around AI, they're really excited to see examples of how AI works. But the question that they all struggle with is, if you were able to get that time, if you were able to increase your capacity, double it, triple it, 500%, 1,200%, what would you do? And one of the challenges is that, demand drives supply. And so if we don't have an adequate demand of what we would do with that time, it's hard to then steer resources the right way. And so I see like more strategic engagement, engage with additional HCPs. Yeah. So like, Melissa, Pete, Nick, like, are you going to triple, quadruple the number of HCPs that MSLs engage with? Are you going to, what does it look like to be more strategic, right? Like,
What are the metrics we're focusing on? Yeah. What is different? How are we measuring success? There are many places we can go deeper, go bigger, think differently, transform. So I think that's the stories that we need to be debating and thinking through in a little bit bigger way. And because a lot of this is great. And I think this is the starting point of the conversation. Optimizing skills. Yes. We're going to focus a lot about, and what does optimizing look like? What are soft skills now? Has that changed? I mean, I could ask the question to every one of these, and these are great. This is great feedback. Let's think about one of the things that AI can help reduce the cognitive load. Yes. And I'm telling you, it can be paralyzing because that cognitive load of all of the information. I mean, you guys have seen some of the stats around the doubling of knowledge and the doubling of information used to be measured in years, and now it's measured in days and sometimes even less than that. So the amount of information is in and of itself paralyzing. So filtering out the noise is something that AI can help us with as well.
Pete says, if you have more strategic engagement, you increase the possibility of addressing clinical gaps and improving clinical practice.
If we're honest with ourselves at the organizational level, enterprise level, we're still kind of operating in this model that is a little bit antiquated, meaning our leaders, and I've even talked to CMOs that still say things like medical affairs is this information honest broker, the source of truth, the primary source of real data. And the challenge with that is a lot of the things that you guys are saying, the amount of information is paralyzing how we think about it. But the truth of the matter is that the model's fracturing and at a faster rate than we anticipate. And here's the truth, because the medical community is adopting AI way faster than we are. And so if your teams are spending time in the productivity trap of enhancing productivity without thinking forward and thinking about how that's going to impact medical community, the medical community is adopting AI because their patients are walking. I mean, think about when patients were walking through with the WebMD little blue folders to talk, challenge their physician. Now they're walking in with, AI in their hand. And so the medical community has had to adapt to using AI at a way faster pace. And it's hit far sooner than we are able to adapt, as this data shows. Because if you look at just the last 3 years, on the left-hand side, HCPs are using it for literature search and medical research summaries and clinical Q&A and differential diagnostic assistance and patient summarization, which I hope as a patient they are doing that, because I would like them to track my status better. But they are having to do that because the patients are demanding it, because they have access, because it's happening. And you can see that we entered the picture at, like, they were at nearly 40% on the right-hand side, 40% adoption rate, when we were just kind of being curious about it at about that rate. And we've kind of mirrored their adoption rate is doubled, more than doubled, and our curiosity rate is aligned with that. But the enterprise level adoption, I mean, we have clients who is only just now in the last few months allowing their medical affairs teams to use Copilot. I mean, that if that's where you are, I feel like this is not doomsday, but it is just a wake up call that it's time that we have these conversations, because the medical community is far ahead of us. So I'm going to now, let's talk a little bit about a little bit of this lean towards what AI does well and what the human does well.
Yeah. So again, I hope all of you have access and opportunity and training and experience with different AI platforms right now. I can tell you, when you look at those types of engagement goals that we have, awareness and understanding, belief, and impact, AI is extremely good right now at awareness and understanding uh, uh, activities, right? It's really good at synthesis. It can generate summaries. I was talking to somebody in university who was really frustrated because he sat through a 2-hour lecture on a topic, and there was a quiz at the end, and he could answer 1 out of the 20 questions. Took the lecture notes and took the material, stuck it in Notebook LM, which is the best platform for learning, I believe, and got a 3-minute explanation of the same topic, went back and was able to answer all 20 questions perfectly, right? Like, it's so good at explaining things. It is able to monitor activities right now. It can go across thousands of sources and find signals. I just worked with a team on automating email drafts, right? So that when an email comes in, it looks at your SharePoint site and is able to find answers to questions, and then looks at how you have responded to that specific person in the past and drafts it in that same language, right? It can score and prioritize cable engagements, right? All the new CRM tools are all coming out with logging and planning and like all these built-in capabilities where it will do that part for us well. And when we look at that list that we just had up around the activities that the AMA says that HCPs are using it for, it's around becoming aware of science and education around science, right? It is really good at those things. Yet we're working with over 35 medical affairs teams. And when we look at even the goals that are written, right? MSL goals, medical plans, it says things like educate on this, engage on that, right? It isn't, we're going to change this belief. It isn't, we are going to change this activity or this action within the medical practice, right? Somebody just said most enterprises are still operating with risk frameworks designed for systems that were deterministic. Yes, it's literally AI is breaking all of these assumptions. Yes, I do understand that, compliance is one of those things that we do have to help catch up to that. Now, here are some things, again, hours a day I spend with AI that it doesn't do a good job at yet. And I still think there is a pretty long road ahead of us before it's good at these things. So, for example, building trust. reading a room, unspoken concerns, political dynamics, right? Because the people that are putting inputs into the chat bots and into the systems are often unaware, or that's not what they think the problem is, it often will recognize some things that you can get if you are in the room. Mm, Going from I understand to I believe, right? Capturing the HCP nonverbal and verbal complexities. Again, we're not seeing AI agents yet that have their cameras on, right? Like Claude and Doximity and like they're all coming out with these models designed for the medical community. They don't have the camera on, right? It's not one of the features where it could be reading your face and adjust based on what it thinks you're thinking. An important one is that it can't bear accountability and follow through. In fact, they all have a big disclaimer at the bottom that says that they don't. Right. And so, and then how, to navigate institutional resistance and then be the person who shows up when things go wrong. Right. Like it doesn't do that. And so these are the things that are fundamentally human that are on that other extreme around belief and adoption. Yet we don't see belief and adoption written as the goal, as the thing that people are talking about when they stand on stage at national meetings, that they're training towards. We're hearing it as starting to be discussed, but it isn't the thing. We're still saying we're educating, we're making people aware, we're sending out emails about the new data that came out. And we need to fundamentally we can become more, as Linda was saying, more efficient at those things. We can use AI tools. But when we talk about the demand of where to spend our time so that there is a return, it's about how do we do these things. I also think that there's something there tied back to purpose, right? If one of the questions I've been asking MSLs in most of the trainings that we've done around AI is what has been the most meaningful moments of your MSL career? And nobody has told me that it was hitting 35 interactions last month. Nobody told me that it was teaching a particular scientific talk. Every single time that somebody came back and said, what is the most meaningful moment of your MSL career? It was about when a patient's life changed or when an HCP was it like believed something, understood something differently, it started using it, doing it. I don't know if you have any examples or that you want to throw in the chat, but Linda, what was yours?
So I have to say several things, a lot of them tied to patient impact. But I will say one of the most rewarding times, especially when I was an MSL, is that there's always this talk of peer-to-peer interactions, but we don't go in at the peer-to-peer level. We go in at the MSL to HCP, MSL to KOL level. We have to earn the peer-to-peer. So I think one of the moments that I love that I had to earn and develop the skills to get to that point is where we know, like if you've been MSLing for any amount of time, when that shift happens, where you go from being a MSL, a company representative, to a peer. And that moment is when that's the opportunities to learn and get honest feedback from the medical community in a meaningful way to get insights that drive strategic decisions when you reach that. That doesn't mean you can't get insights in most interactions, but there's that moment when you're a peer in the eyes of your counterpart. That's rewarding, and that's hard earned because it's not common.
I'm looking at the names of the people on this webinar, and so many of you are Quillo users. So you know our philosophy around using insights to measure the change in belief about your science, and then using additional insights to understand why that belief changes or not. And getting ready for this webinar, I looked across over 100,000 data points that we've got around insights, and all the ones that measure. You're telling us, you're saying to your organizations, they understand and they're aware. That is where the majority of HCPs across the entire data set are stuck. And that's going to be the part that, even though we see more and more and more engagements with those folks that are still in that spot, until we move toward changing belief and helping people to implement and have strategies and content and tactics for that, that is going to prevent us. And so let's just real quick talk about where AI falls short and why that's an opportunity for you.
Absolutely. And when we were preparing for this webinar, I went on LinkedIn and looked at some of the comments that were coming in for the different announcements. And I, before we go to the next slide, I wanted to read a quote that I thought, that summarizes it quite well. So this is an actual comment we got in our LinkedIn post, and this is from Dr. Jacqueline S. I don't think she's on here, but this is me high-fiving you. What AI hasn't replaced is the MSL's ability to hold space for doubt. When a physician says, the data looks fine, but I'm still not comfortable, that's not a knowledge gap, and no generated interaction closes it in the way a human sitting with clinical uncertainty alongside the doctor can. Man, that is spot on. And another way of looking at it, I don't know if any of you know Simon Sinek, but he is a prolific author in the organizational effectiveness space, and he has a significant focus on the human element. And many of you may know him from one of his first books that we all recognize. It became a TED Talk, which, by the way, it's a long time ago, over a decade, still one of the best. But Start With Why. But he's been very vocal on the impact of AI and the human element of late. And he makes this comment that AI will provide boats for everyone, except for the time when there's a storm and you don't know how to swim. Here's the thing. We still have to learn the science. We still have to do the work. We can't get lazy because AI is making us faster and more efficient. We still have to have the experience to recognize when AI is wrong or take it to the next level in the conversation. That still requires the work. We don't get to kind of back off. We might have easier access. We might be able to brainstorm in a different way and learn it a little bit faster, but you still have to learn it because there's going to be times when AI is wrong and you need to catch that. Because I think this other statement, the more automated our world becomes, the more valuable the human being is becoming, hands down. And I think that is really what we're not doing a great job planning for is that piece. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that as we go, because AI is good at the destination. And we always talk about our role in the journey, but what does that actually look like in practice? So we know AI can deliver data, literature synthesis, questions, content, even, scheduling meetings and predicting behavior and helping us with next best action. But it takes the human to earn the trust, to build conviction, to practice, to change, because I say this all the time, and I'm not ever going to stop saying this till the day I die. In the medical affairs space, we're not in the business of creating revenue. We're in the business of having practice-changing conversations. So we have to measure those things that say behavior change has happened. So it levels the playing field. The human skills that become our moat are the things that we all know. This is not this is not some sort of new thing you're going to be hearing about. We know that empathy, conviction, presence, showing up when it's hard, that's the things that AI can't do. And we put the podcast icon at the top right because one of the things, this is important to me. These are the things I'm passionate about, this human element. And so I've started a podcast to talk to leaders, exceptional leaders, who I think have good insights around the human element. So feel free to tune in, but you will hear these things talked a lot about by the people that are on the podcast. And these are no longer soft skills. These are actually the hard skills of the future MSL. You're going to hear us say that a lot, but let's take a little bit a look at what that looks like.
So I think that's the case. And if you walk away, and we'll go into some very tactical things that you and your teams can do right now, but the biggest step is if you look at your goals, your objectives, the topics you talk about in meetings, and it's about how many people are we educating? How are we going to increase awareness of the science? it's important. It's the foundation, but it's the thing that is at most risk as AI becomes more commonplace within the organizations. If you can switch to conversations around which HCPs have barriers to the belief in that science and why, and if they do believe it, what's preventing them from acting on it, and focus there, have goals around that. That's where the longer runway is that AI just can't replace at this point. And in fact, I'll give a shout out to Medical Affairs Professional Society and Pete. He's on the line here. One of the best sessions I've attended in the last 5 years at a MAPS event was when the team from Boehringer taught care gaps and belief change and how to effectively measure it in your organization and how to lead the change so that everybody from SVP to MSL is all talking that same language, showing up with the same purpose, and implementing it. I'm really excited. We haven't even announced this yet, but I'll share it. Trolls, who presented that, he and I have been talking quite a bit since then, and we're going to be doing a webinar that goes even deeper into those capabilities on May 20th, May 21st. It's a Thursday. Anybody who'd like the invite, just put care in the chat. We'll make sure you get an invite, but it is down to the detail of how do you measure that? How do you set goals around it? He'll tell you the challenges he's had and how we overcame conversations with compliance and commercial and just how to put that in place step by step. Okay. Care. Great. I see a lot of you will be joining us. Wonderful. Let me share some things that you can do like today with your team. Okay. So the first is audit your time. Second, let AI handle AI work. Third is become belief architects. Show up when it's hard and treat AI as a force multiplier. Let me show you what that means. First thing is first, audit your time. Like have every single one of your MSLs pull up the last 2 months worth of interactions that they've had, engagements with HCPs. What percentage of their time is being spent on awareness and understanding? And what percentage of your time is spent in conversations around belief and impact of that science and helping people apply it? Right? Track that time. Be honest. Right? Set up your CRM so that it's clear which of those you're having engagements about, and then set goals for yourself about moving toward the more impactful conversations that AI can't have for you. Okay. Start there. Doesn't have to become some big corporate program. It doesn't have to be a KPI on your MSL dashboard, but set the goal for yourself. Can you move towards that? Okay. Some things to do to help your team get ready for that is that you have the content, right? Do a content audit. How much of your content is teaching science, making people aware of science, versus how much of it is stuff that helps people believe it and know how to put it into practice. If you are doing training around MSL conversations, Linda has been doing a lot of these trainings around how do you have conversations that are belief changing, right? How do you do that? Measure your belief. If you're not using an insights platform that measures it, change that, right? You could use ours, you could use your CRM, doesn't matter. Just make sure that you have a place to capture the belief and if it's changing or not. Focus on space active recall. So I think one of the things that is happening in the AI age is that we are producing content faster than ever before, and we're producing content faster than people are using AI to consume it. And so it's going to be overwhelming. So how do you make sure that somebody who heard that conversation, who learned the science from something that you did, remembers it in the moment when they need to use it to make a decision or talk about it, right? And if you haven't seen our webinars on a very proven adult learning principle called Space Active Recall, it's about how do you use questions to help people move it into the conscious memory so that people can use it, right? Start with the care gap, not the data gap. Build practice integration tools, right? Co-create with practicing physicians. A lot of you already do that. Build real-world evidence around evidence-based care. And that's what you're going to hear from Trolls and the Boehringer team on the 21st, okay? So, like, go look. It's not just about your time. But these are the things that if you spend time on now will help your team spend the time here. Okay. And yes, absolutely, Jennifer, it will change based on product life cycle. If you're launching and nobody's ever seen your data, yeah, we need to start with awareness, right? But awareness and understanding can be done much more efficiently at scale, large, using AI and automation. So use it for that, right? That's number two, right? Like let AI do what AI does best, right? So routine medical inquiries, digital channels for scientific awareness. Your MSLs are never going to have the capacity to reach the scale and number of HCPs on just awareness. I'm not talking about quality. I'm not talking about depth of interaction, but just to create awareness that your digital teams are going to be able to do. Okay. So use the time you have, go deeper on high impact engagements. I think that's what some of you were saying before. Okay. Mm. And Pete, thanks for sharing, right? Understanding and awareness represents the majority of insights captured. Yes, we should be changing our kits and kicks to understand if belief is changing. And anybody wants help doing that, call Linda. I'll give you her number at the end of the day. She can help.
So that kind of leads in. That's a great segue into this because part of the way to shift insights away from us showing that we're busy. I mean, we still love to show we're busy. We still love to show those number of activities. But busy is just the foundation. You have to have the opportunities to engage and learn before. So that this mindset shift that precipitates this shift in the insights we gather is going from the data presenter profile to the belief architect. So thinking about, did I deliver something versus did I actually have an impact, change belief? And that's earned. That's not a one meeting event. That's something that's longitudinal, that takes place over time where you build trust. Through active listening, you understand the barriers and help navigate the barriers where you can. And that's the other aspect of it is where the belief architect is somebody who understands that the exchange is not at the HCP MSL level, that it's bigger than that. There are other variables that impact belief. And so being able to understand institutional politics and understand all of the different stakeholders that influence clinical decision making is part of the process. So this is not something that will happen overnight. You're not going to go change your CRM to have better quality kicks and kits. It takes practice. The teams have to agree on it. And this is my favorite slide of the whole deck right here. Once you identified through kits and kicks those care gaps that we'll talk a little bit more about in just a minute, AI is already able to identify the care gaps by country, by state, by zip code, by practice, by individual. It doesn't care if it closes. And that's going back to what all the comments are saying, is that we have to be accountable for the behavior change and the follow through and showing up when it's hard and having the hard conversations where somebody says, I understand the data, sort of, but I'm still not changing practice. We need to dive in. The human job, which is your job, is that part. We care about closing the gap. AI doesn't. So this one slide framework is going to be the crux of that webinar that Scott was talking about, where the terms target population outcomes is becoming the measure of success. It's changing. It's going from these activity metrics to more, are we moving the needle in clinical practice? And so, again, AI does a great job identifying the care gaps, but we have to understand the beliefs and barriers. What does the physician believe that keeps them from connecting science to clinical decisions? And that can happen at any stage in the product life cycle. If somebody, as Jennifer, I think, was just mentioning, that the scientific exchange and the insights we gather change and evolve over the product life cycle. In the beginning, we're looking at differences in the real world patient to the one that showed up in our clinical studies, and it evolves to then access and real world experience by the physicians and barriers. That changes, but this remains the same. We got to understand it. We got to have very specific targeted conversations with MSLs around specific beliefs that underpin the clinical behaviors we're focused on in the moment. And that's what's going to move the needle and change practice. And I mean, step forward, it's going to feel a little bit anticlimactic, since we already know this, but actually implementing it, operationalizing it is the hard part, and we're not seeing that. So show up when it's hard. That follow through Sometimes we get overwhelmed and feel so busy that we forget the follow through. And that's the most important piece. Developing the relationships. Genuine professional and strategic partnerships are hard won. They are not something that comes just because you're called an MSL. And be the person that the physician calls when they have challenging cases or when they don't understand something, not just for a reprint. And invest. I mean, this is a lifelong process. There's no finish line. You are going to be developing your human skills, empathy, conflict resolution, storytelling capabilities, executive presence for the rest of your life. It's a continuous journey. Enjoy the journey, but never slow down or stop on the journey. And then everybody has the same tools, man. So you have to focus on the human element. And it's easy to say this, it is hard to do. And we're seeing that when push comes to shove, people fall back on old behaviors. And so it takes commitment to make this shift.
And then the last one is to start using AI. If your team, right? Most of you are field medical leaders, so I'm going to speak directly to you. If your team does not know how to use whatever you have, Copilot, ChatGPT, internal solution, Claude, whatever it is, start encouraging them to use it on their own. Again, don't break your rules. Don't upload your confidential data. Don't put your strategies out there into systems that are not protected, but they need to learn how to use it because it's going to come. And the teams that were in our workshop on just how to use basic Copilot have told us they're finding upwards of 10 hours a week of new time and productivity. And so, that is the relief valve that allows you to turn your attention on this. So, and then very great question around setting goals around belief change. I do not believe that you should set a belief change goal, especially in self-reported outcomes, because guess what? The data will magically change, but it won't be accurate. You want to change the care gap goal, right? The actual, did something change in clinical practice? Now, the belief change is a leading indicator, and the goal should be a medical affairs goal. Like, did our data change? Did our materials change? And MSL has a role to play of being extremely effective in delivery, having the relationship so there's opportunity to do so, and bringing back insights about why the belief has changed or not. But if you set goals around the belief change, like everybody should be at a 5 by December, it's not going to be real data. So yes, we do offer MSL level training. If anybody would like to do it for your upcoming workshops and meetings, let us know. Phew. So that's it. And there's some questions about the slides. Yes, the materials will be available. We also post this as a recording on our YouTube channel. And we'll invite anybody to please reach out to Linda if there's anything in this session that really struck a nerve that you need your MSLs to see, or if you're running into challenges that you didn't feel comfortable posting in the chat, reach out. We're really, really passionate about this. We know most of you on the line, so it'd be great to catch up anyway. If you could, there's 1 minute left. What's the one thing you can take out of today to prepare your team? What's one thing you could take? Please just drop it in the chat as a thank you to Linda, and make sure that you have something you can take away. All right. I hope everybody has a wonderful week, and stay out there, get ahead of AI, make an impact. We'll see you next time. Thank you.